Hey guys, so our challenge for today is to create a to-dos. So these to-dos, you are supposed to add a new to-do, and then you submit a new to-do, and the to-do should be added here in the to-dos list. And then also we will add functionality whereby you can toggle a to-do on or off. So using JavaScript. So but in our first step, we're just going to start with creating this UI, and then tomorrow we'll create the functionality using JavaScript. So let's get started. So to get started, I'm not going to create a card. Let me create a to-do wrapper. This is just a div. And then in my styles, the styles are empty. So let's link up the CSS. So we can say link CSS. We link the CSS file. And then let's add the default CSS styles. So one of the default is that I want to add a font. So you can hand over to Google fonts.google.com and then look for font called Inter. So the font we want is called Inter. So click get font and then get embed code and then remove all the others you might have. Go to the import, and also we can edit here because we don't want all the sizes. So we want 400, 500. I think we can still remain with these. So then copy the import and add it to your CSS file, like so. And then let's grab all the elements and remove the margins on the elements, the paddings as well. And we add box sizing of border box. I've already talked about the box sizing property, so I hope you remember. Then we can go live and see what we do have. As I said, that in our first step, you're just going to create the UI. And then also you can go to my GitHub and look for a repository called TikTok project. So github.com/TechWithTwin/TikTok projects, and then look for to do one. And then inside the to do one, you see an images folder. Then you see this SVG, download that SVG. This is the SVG we are going to use here. Inside this circle, you can see there is a tick. So that's the SVG we are going to use. The next thing is that I'm going to grab the body. So you can grab the body and say font family, then enter. Then and as a fallback, we use sans serif. Something else now is that you can see there's a very nice background gradient. So to create a gradient, you're not going to create it by hand. We're going to use an online tool. This online tool is called cssgradient.io. Then I want a radio gradient. You can play around and see which one you'd like. So then you go on the bottom, you can copy. So after copy, then you can add that background color. Now you won't see it because we need to give the body a height and a width. So you can say height 100 viewport height. And then now you can see now the background has been created. So let's continue with our to-dos wrapper. Inside the to-do wrapper, we do have the heading. The heading has the title and the number of tasks. So just going to say dot header, and then h2, then today's to-dos, and then this text that says 6 tasks. Just create a paragraph and say 6 tasks. As I said, we are going to use JavaScript in the later tutorial to integrate JavaScript such that we can now add to-dos. And then finally, we are going to persist that data into a browser storage called local storage. So a local storage is basically a storage that browsers provide websites. So this website can store some values that can be persisted even when you reload or you close the tab. It is basically like a safe space or a safe that each website gets a storage of its own. It's like a locker in high school. Or so if you have a locker in high school, or maybe you have your own locker that is maybe on the wall, you go with your key and open. This is the same concept whereby each website gets its own local storage where it can store its data. So the next thing is this div that has the add new to do. So we'll just call it add new. Inside that div, we're going to create the input, and it's of type text because this is a text. We are not going to add a name because we're not going to submit this form. We also don't need the ID. So then we can add a placeholder and say add new, just like that. That's the placeholder, and then the button. So you can see it has only 2 elements. So the next one is the button, and it says add new do. Finally, the next section is the to-do list. This one is just listing the to-dos. So we are going to create another div and call it to-do list. And then inside is where we have to-dos. All right. So this one is a to-do. This one is a to-do. So how we can work around this is that let's create the to-do. Inside the to-do, we have the paragraph. This one says visit my grandmother. And then we have a wrapper. This wrapper, you can see now we only have the SVG as the tick. So we need a wrapper div that wraps this SVG so that we can style the wrapper. So we're going to say dot wrapper. Inside the wrapper, then let's create an image. And this image's source is the so let me drag that SVG. So I'm just going to create a folder and call it images. And then inside there, let me drag the SVG. So that's the tick.svg. You can see it here. So you can go back, and now here we can reference that tick. And then we can save, and that's it, guys. That's it for the HTML. So we can copy this down for the new to do that says, so the new to do says run HTML. So we can do run HTML, and then yeah, let's focus on that first. So if you go to the finished version, this is what we have. We can start styling the card. And the first thing we are going to do is that the card has a class of to do wrapper. So you can just grab it by dot to do wrapper. And then inside here, we can create say background color is white. And then you can see it, it's white. Then let's give it a width. You can say width 400 pixels. All right, the width is persisted. And then let's go back to the body. You can display it flex. We want to place this card in the middle. So display flex. Then justify content center. Like that. And then you can see now the card tries to take the full width. So we can give it the full height. So we can say height to fit its content. And then you can see now it respects that. Let's add some padding to the body. So we can say padding to rem, because you could see that it was so close to the edges. The next thing is that now the to do wrapper has the elements are too close to the edges. Let's add some padding. So you can do padding 1 rem here. You can see now it looks a bit nice. And then let's add a border radius because these edges are too sharp. So to add a border radius, you just say border radius, let's do 5 pixels. Then you can see now it looks a bit nice. And then let's display this wrapper flex and align items to the center. So we can say display flex. And then align items to the center. But the flex direction should be column. So we say flex direction column. All right. And then text aligned to the center. You can see the 6 tasks is not aligned to the center. So we can do text aligned to the center. And now everything looks nice. Let's add some gaps. So we can say gap maybe 1 rem. All right. We are getting somewhere. So the next thing we need to work on is the to-do list. If you come here to the finished version of the to-do list, You can see this is the to-do list. It has a different style. So we can grab the .to-do list. And the first thing you're going to do is to add a background color to the to-do list. So the background color is RGBA. And then so 252, 176, 69, and then 0.2. And then you can see it. Let's give it a width of 100%. We wanted to fill the whole width, so we can say width 100%. And then let's do some paddings. So you can see this visit my grandmother is too close to the edges. So we can add some paddings. Then we say something like 0.7 rem. And then you can see the padding is okay. Let's add some border radius to make sure the edges are not too sharp. So we can say border radius of 5 pixels. All right. So we also need to display this flex so that we can give a gap between these two elements. So we can say display flex direction of column, then a gap of 0.6 rem. And then you can see now this one, we want to place the text and this icon side by side. So we can go ahead and grab the to do itself. This is inside the to do. So we can go ahead and say dot to do. Let's grab the dot to do. The reason we're using the dot and then to do is because this is a class. We can say display flex. You can see now it's like this, and then we justify content space between. You can see, and then let's align these items to the center. Then we align the items to the center. And then that's it. The next thing is to style the wrapper. So the wrapper is this circle with a background color of white. So how we can do this is that we grab it. It has a class of wrapper. So we can do dot to do dot wrapper. And then first of all, let's add some width to it, 1.5 rem. And then let's add some background color of white. You can see it is box shaped. Let's make it circular by using the border radius, which of 50%. I hope you can see it. The next thing, to make sure that everything is aligned to the center and justified to the center, we can use flex. So you can say display flex, justify content center, and align item center. So this is a very cool trick to make sure that everything is aligned in the middle. The next thing is that we can give it a height of 1.5 rem as well to make sure it is a square, so that whenever it has a border radius of 50%, it looks nice. But we can use a cool trick called aspect ratio. So if you do an aspect ratio of 1:1, it means that the width and the height has to have the same aspect, the same with the same dimensions. So then let's do a border. Do a 2 pixel solid RGBA, and then let's use RGB. So 252, 176, 69. You can see it there. All right, so let's add a padding to this element. We can say a padding of maybe 0.1 rem. All right. And then you also want a cursor of pointer. So something else you might notice that this is not circular shaped. So let's see. Then we need to align these items to the center. Let's go to the to do. So we grab the wrapper and then give it an aspect ratio. Seems like the aspect ratio is not working. So let's do a height of 1.5. All right, and then the padding, let's increase the padding to maybe 0.3 rem. So let's see dot to do dot wrapper. Then the padding of, there might be an issue. Let's do 1 rem and see. Okay, so let's do 0.6. All right, and then we display it flex, justify content center, align items center. The border radius is also 50. So we want to add a space here. So let's do 1 rem. Okay, know where the issue is. So the image inside is overflowing. So even if we did a height in the aspect ratio 1:1, so the reason we are getting this issue is because, and also the padding should be maybe 1.2, 0.2. The reason we are getting this issue is this image, it needs to give, we need to make sure we give it a height or the width so that it doesn't overflow and cause issues. So we can do now a width of 15 and then a width of 15. But we could also do this in CSS, but we don't want. So now you can see it looks a bit nicer. So the next thing is to style the button, the add new button. So we just grab it. We only have one button, so we can grab it by its tag name. And then say padding, we also always do 5 pixels, 10 pixels. You can see it. Then the background color. Now the background, I want to use the same gradient we have, but now we want it to be linear. So I showed you where you can get the background colors or the background gradients. So go ahead and come up with one of your kind. The next thing, let's remove the border. It's very ugly. Let's do a border none. Then you can see the text is not visible under that gradient. So we can do a color of white. All right, then the edges are too sharp. Let's do some border radius. 5 pixels is always okay. Then let's increase the font size. So you can say font size maybe 1 rem. It's now the button is a bit huge. So finally, let's talk about the input. So let's grab the input. So it is in the add new, but you only have one input. So we can just use the tag name and say the height here should be 100%. So it doesn't respect that. So let's do a padding as well. Let's give it the same padding as the button, so that they can be on the same size. And then let's do a border radius as well. So let's do a border radius of 5 pixels. All right, and then the border width of 1 pixels. Now it looks a bit nice. Let's change the background color. So we can say background color RGBA, then 252, 176, 69, and then 0.2. So it's still the same color we have in the to-do list. And then that's it. And then let's make sure the input takes twice as much width. So we can use flex 2 here. And then in the button, let's do flex 1. So the input will have twice as much width as the button. Then it's flex 1. All right. And then let's grab the header. I think the reason is that we didn't start the header. And then give it a width of 100%. So we can do dot header. Then width 100%. So still doesn't care. So called it header. Oh, no, not the header. We want the add new. So we want the add new, not the header. So let's go to the add new. So we haven't captured the add new, so we can do it here. Say dot add new display flex, and then align items to the center. Let's give them a gap of 0.5 rem. And now this one is where we add the width of 100%. And then you can see now everything looks nice as we expect. So guys, so that's how we can add this. And then finally, let's make one of these elements. So we will have the completed set. We will have a to-do that is completed. So we need to change some styles on the paragraph as well as the images. So how we can do this is, let's grab the paragraph. So we have the dot to do and then paragraph. So we can do, so it is dot to do paragraph, and then whenever it has a completed class, then text decoration should be line through, and then an opacity can even do 0.6. And then, so if we go back now and make one of the to-dos paragraph completed, this is what we'll do with JavaScript. You can see now this one is striked, and then we want to make sure this one is empty. So we can add a style of display none. You can see now we achieved that functionality. So from tomorrow, we are going to work on adding functionality, that is JavaScript, to this card, and then persist that to local storage. And then if you'd like to try it out at that end, try it out and share in the comments. I'll go ahead and go through them and see whether you are able to add this into local storage using JavaScript, and then fetch the data from local storage and show it. Have the ability to toggle on and off whether it's completed. And then as an exercise, make sure you can try to add this whenever you cross a to do, make sure it goes to the bottom. So thank you for watching, guys. Make sure you like and follow for more.